Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news. It's match day. I hope you're doing well. Carabao Cup starts here, but this is the latest news for Manchester United as Erik ten Hag sends a big warning re Luke Shaw and Antony. Two very different warnings, one about an injury, one about a failure to perform. We'll talk about that, of course, as some players do return. We had some good injury news last night, but we have got those updates to give you as well. Also, a bit of exclusive news as well. Manchester United's scouting network of Europe and South America is really starting to cook, as some as you would like to know. Obviously, Ineos only started work halfway through the summer, really. That work has not stopped. We were scouting an attacking midfielder from Norway, 17 years of age. We'll speak about that, but also just the intricacy and depth and pure scope of what United are doing at the moment. Don't expect Kone and others to be the last in that area. United doing some good work around that as well. Also, we'll be talking about Erik ten Hag and his desire to, what was his words? Go for another significant trophy with the Carabao Cup. Effectively saying, we're going to go for the lot. So there we go. Lots and lots to get involved with. Right, let's start off with then what I wanted to start off with. Can I just give a big shout out to Ivan? Yes, I can. Welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much for tuning in. Papa Green has been a member for 46 months as well. Thank you very much for tuning in there. So let's start off talking about Luke Shaw. This is what Fabrizio Romano had to say. Well, no, Fabrizio Romano did not have this to say. Erik ten Hag, I don't know why I've come out with Fabrizio Romano. He needs a rest. Transfer window's closed. Erik ten Hag said this about Luke Shaw. He's progressing, but not yet ready to be selected. He is progressing well. How many times have we heard that? We have a plan in our head when he can be ready, but you're always dependent on how the progress will go. There are many factors a plan can accelerate or slow down. Now, what I'm hearing about Luke Shaw from a couple of decent sources is that return dates are almost being laughed at because there is no set in stone return date for Luke Shaw, even to get him back training with the first team. And I think when Erik ten Hag is saying things like progressing well, but things can slow down and speed up at any point, and we've got a plan in our head, but we can't really be sure as to when that's going to work out. We know Mason Mount's back training with the first team and therefore should be back really available after Palace, maybe FC20, maybe even Spurs. But Mason Mount's going to be back in the next couple of weeks. For how long? You know, you will always be a little bit on edge about that. But the Luke Shaw one is massively concerning. It's I feel bad for Ten Hag and I feel bad for Manchester United on this because I think they've got a bit of a nightmare as to how this is. You can't dress it up. You know, you can't polish a turd. It's a shit situation whereby a player that hasn't played since February decided he was going to be fit for the Euros. Massive risk to himself and the club reputationally if it doesn't work out, comes back from the Euros and misses the first 2 months of the season. It's just a bad look. You can put him in the bloody the advert with Angry Ginge and the new kit, and it looked fantastic. But the bottom line is you can't polish a turd of PR, and it's absolutely terrible PR. And I'd say this, you know, a lot of people come out with statements. If Man United do this, they'll get top four, right? The do this is have a left back who can play at left back, who is a left back. Very early on in the season, we've lost 2 of our first 4, but I already would say if Man United had a left back for most of this season, like Aston Villa will, they've got Maatsen and Digne. Most teams will have a starting left back and a backup left back. We have neither. If we had a left back, I think we'd get top 4. I don't think people understand the balance that actually having a proper left back bring. I'm not saying give us bloody prime Maldini. I'm just saying we haven't got a left back. And we talk about who's playing up front or who's playing at centre back and who's playing on the wing. We haven't got a bloody left back. Luke, you know, Delo is doing a job, but we saw in the game at the weekend against Southampton that their winger at times sent him back to Portugal. He thought he was on international duty. It was embarrassing. But Delo's not a left back. You are completely back to front on what, you know, your weak side is not your weak, is your strong side. So look, I think that I'm happy to say it. You don't have to say it, but I genuinely do believe that if we had a left back this season for most of the season, I think we would get top 4. I think it's such an important area. And at the moment, it's an area that we're having to, make do in. But there we go. Ringo says, if we had a left back, we would get top 4, and he's laughing. Is top 4 not the aspiration of a Manchester United fan then, Ringo? You sound like a bloody dog. Who calls themselves Ringo? Oh, I suppose if you're a Beatles fan. That was the 60s. People call their dogs Ringo now, mate. Grow up. But look, seriously, I think that... don't call yourself Ringo. But seriously, don't worry, I'm not bothered. I've checked the demographics. The amount of United stand viewers called Ringo are minuscule. It really isn't going to make any difference. But my point is really that this is a worry. Malacia hasn't played for 18 months. Luke Shaw hasn't played for coming up for 8 months. And we haven't got a left back. And I feel bad for Manchester United and I feel bad for Erik ten Hag. I do feel... Do we feel bad for Luke Shaw? I do feel bad for Luke Shaw because I like him as a player. He should never have done what he did. It was bad advice. It was selfish. Bottom line, that's the truth. But we have to deal with the situation. I just want him playing fit because I actually think he's a fantastic left back. But as I said, Erik ten Hag probably giving one of the biggest updates he's ever given about an injury because what he's basically saying is we want Luke Shaw back. We've got a plan to get him back, but we've got absolutely no idea when he will be back, and it could be further delayed. From within the club, sources around the actual fitness of Luke Shaw, you can't get an update. And people will say, well, you shouldn't get an update. But you see accounts out there like UTD Menace does a great job around that sort of stuff. And there are people out there that get good updates around injuries. But with Luke Shaw, we just can't get it. And some people want it to be because the club are protecting him. I think the club are protecting him and themselves because they know that if they say Luke Shaw's not going to be back until after the next international break, the shit's going to hit the fan. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're pushing it back to that. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. Michael Wright says, how dare you deprive of us an 8 p.m. Monday night show? You have some explaining to do. Well, I'll tell you where I was last night. I went to watch Birmingham City against Wrexham because I do the podcast with Will. He's a massive Blues fan and he's been begging me for ages to go. And I said, I'm only going to watch a good game. So I went and watched that. Tom Brady was there, David Beckham was there, and guess who turned up because he likes American things now and he wants to break America? Neville. And I stood on the pitch. Basically, I could see him in one of the boxes on the other side, and I was like, "Come on!" And he never came for a chat. But now I've got a vlog of that coming up at lunchtime. It was an interesting good couple of goals. Birmingham City are basically the Man City of of League One, though. They're absolutely spent shitloads. I mean, they bought a striker that played against Man United for Fulham. He came on Stansfield, came on for Fulham on the opening day. He's now the striker for Birmingham City in League One. There we go. So get your thoughts in about the Luke Shaw thing. Very, very interesting about that. Papa Green's been a member for 46 months. Let's talk about what Erik ten Hag had to say about Antony, because this was rather interesting as well. And I think there's been a total and utter change of scene here when it comes to Antony, because remember that Erik ten Hag was saying before about Antony. I mean, look, he spent 80 million quid on him at the end of the day. I can't polish this turd either. I'm not saying Antony's a turd. I'm just saying spending 80 million. Look, 80 million pounds on Antony is a turd of a decision. Turd means crap, means shit, means poo, wherever you're from. So look, that's the truth. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible decision. But what we have heard about Antony in the past from ten Hag is this. There's a top footballer there, and he's going to be, he's going to basically saying he's going to come good in the end. I think we're getting a very different message from ten Hag around Antony now. The other players are doing, this is his words, not mine. The other players are doing so well and are contributing. We have Ahmad and Garnacho have been very effective. Rashford scored at the weekend. He has to earn the right in training. The others are doing so well. He has to get above them. And he also goes on to say, of course, he's impatient. He wants to play and is fighting to play. But, I think that obviously Erik ten Hag has the backing of some of us and he doesn't have the backing of others. But I think I think anybody would agree that that sort of a comment from a player that he spent a lot of money on is actually the sort of comment you want to have from your manager, isn't it? What he's basically saying is that, look, he's not performing to the level that Ahmad, Garnacho and Rashford are at the moment. And if he wants to be in the team, then he's got to be better than them. And I would say that quite rightly, I've seen Pep do it. I've seen Arteta do it. I've seen Klopp do it. When you spend money on a signing that you've gone for, then you are going to want to, it's almost your reputation's on the line, isn't it? So I think last season there was probably occasions where Antony was getting game time that maybe other people deserved because he was a Ten Hag signing. But I think this season, and maybe we should be applauding the likes of Wilcox and Ashworth on this one, because maybe they've given Ten Hag the confidence to say, look, Eric, people can make mistakes on signings. You don't need to keep picking him because you bought him. We're not going to sack you because you bought Antony. Because it does feel to me like there is a change with Ten Hag and his approach to Antony, because I think last season we definitely did see him trying to force him into the team, trying to make him be a success, whereas there's a harder line with Antony. Definitely, you can detect it with that Ten Hag interview that there is this harder line, that you're not ahead of Ahmad, you're not ahead of Garnacho, you're not ahead of Rashford, and you're not ahead of them in training either. And if you want to be ahead of them, then you've got to earn that right. And hopefully that can start tonight. But I like this sort of thing because I think in life, everybody's capable of making a mistake. And it's sometimes in life, and I'm sure we're surrounded by people who do this, they make a mistake, but then they compound the mistake by not accepting that they are wrong. And I like this. Antony's barely had, I think he's had about 2 minutes in the opening 4 Premier League games. So there is certainly, he's not chucking Antony on for the last 10 minutes to try and do stuff. He's not trying to start him. And look, if we are going to be successful this season, and I want us to be successful this season, I don't want to see another sacking. I don't want to see more upheaval. I want to see a progress. I want to see a project. And if we are going to see that, then as many of us said in the summer, we have to rid ourselves of the favouritism. And favouritism was certainly something that I think Ten Hag last season could be accused of in relation to Antony. And this season, he certainly can't. So I think that this, as I said yesterday, I know it upset a lot of people on the morning show, but I do see progression. We are conceding less shots. We are having more shots. We are having more of the ball. It's not enough. We're 10th in the league, but we've lost 2 of our first 4 games. But the circumstances of those losses, to me, certainly the Brighton game, could have gone the other way. Liverpool are Liverpool. So I do see progression. It's not enough progression, but it could be if we keep moving in the right direction. And look, honestly, I want Antony to be successful. I'm sure many of you would sell him if you had the opportunity. I'd like him to be successful. 2 years in, we are approaching that sort of pivotal period where we spoke about Jadon Sancho in year 3, and it was like, it's now or never. So I think with Antony, it is now or never. And there are aspects of him over the last 2 years that I'd probably say it's going to be never. I mean, I'm not totally given up, but I would say there's probably a strong 75% chance that this is probably not going to work out. And the reasons for that are attitude at times just doesn't look right. But more importantly, I think it's talent. It's a talent profile. I think he's another player at the moment that looks like he's coming from the Eredivisie. I mean, he was playing for Brazil when he was in the Eredivisie. I don't think Brazil are going to go anywhere near him at the moment. And that, to me, is a talent profile. It's nothing to do with attitude. It's nothing to do with anything else. It's actually, I just don't think he's able to adapt to the Premier League, and it stands out like a sore thumb. And thirdly, the biggest issue I think Antony's got is that Ahmad's better than him, Garnacho's better than him, and Rashford's better than him. And that's a massive problem. So I think that's what Erik Ten Hag is basically saying. He's got to earn it. And I think when we look at it, it's a very big mountain to climb. Having said that, it's not dissimilar to what we've got with Casemiro or what we've got with Victor Lindelof. Players that we probably would move on, but for this season, they actually do give us third, fourth choice backup. And I'm quite comfortable with that. I mean, Victor Lindelof's here until next summer. If we have an injury crisis, he's not a bad player to throw in as fifth choice centre-back, is he? Antony is going to be here till the summer. He's not a bad player to have as a fourth choice winger. So I think from a fan point of view, as long as we've got the harmony and as long as we've got the right mix and as long as we've got rid of the favouritism, as long as Ahmad's not sat on the bench so that Antony can get game time, that's my big point, really. Clues says, I think Toby Collier will start today. It's a fact. I think he needs to start, and I think he's a massive priority player for Ten Hag to start as well. Don't know if Rashford's better, says Azza. What the... Oh, come on. You're having a laugh. I felt much better seeing Rashford finally get subbed, says Mike B. And I wish I can turn 25 and play left back, says Patrice Evra. And can you wish my friend Joel a happy birthday, says Jim. Happy birthday to Joel. Thank you very much for that. And happy birthday to Joel. Assad says, absolute nonsense. How are we progressing? Playing horrendous football and having no identity. Assad, I really don't want to have this conversation with you again. I'm getting a little bit bored of the comments every day. You know, it's boring. It's really, really boring. Not in the sense that your opinion's boring. It's just boring having people every single day start talking about no progress and the football shit. There's people you can literally go and watch who will do that for you every single day. So why don't you go and watch it? It's very obvious that on the United Stand, we have a more balanced conversation and we try and talk more topically about things that are going on. I really don't want to have another conversation about whether we're progressing or we're not. I think we are. You think we're not. Do your laughing emojis, crack on. But it's boring, really, really boring. That's not a topic of conversation today. We're moving on. So moving on, talking about progress. Really interesting. Some of you will know about this player, Nipan, 17 years of age, Norwegian. I think he plays for Rosenborg. He must play for Rosenborg or Lillestrøm. I think it's Rosenborg. Basically, a story coming in that Manchester United had scouts at Rosenborg versus Lillestrøm in Norway at the weekend to watch Nipan, who is a 17-year-old midfielder. Both-footed, apparently. Some of you will know who he is anyway, because I've seen the name mentioned before. The biggest story to this is not that we're signing him or we're signing any other player, but what is going on with Manchester United, and we've seen it with Kone from Mali, and this is where Fival comes in very, 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 very handy, is that Manchester United are playing catch-up. And one thing that you won't get is you might not get a definitive on when Luke Shaw might get back, but what you will get from in the club is these types of stories that they're very happy to be put out there because it is positive and it is expansive and it is progressive. And effectively, there are 3 players that Man United have brought in who are under 17 or under this summer. There's Kone, there's the Arsenal lad and the Crystal Palace lad. There's also the lad from Australia, is it Avery, coming in as well. So that's 4. That's not going to stop. Manchester United are absolutely resolute and tunnel visioned on not only Europe and obviously not only South America, because we're looking Australia, North America, we're looking absolutely everywhere to massively increase our capability and our potential and effectiveness and recruitment level around the world for the next good players. Because we really do feel that one of the feedback points from the last 10 years is that the recruitment has been crap. Well, Slow Sports News, no shit, Sherlock. But also, the transfer market is changing. Only this morning, there is a story about Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, who really should have left in the summer. But there was nobody... There were inquiries, but there was nobody willing to pay what Napoli want. Napoli are now saying, well, we will not sell you on the cheap. So Kvaratskhelia is now thinking about signing a new contract with Napoli to boost his wages. Osman, a year ago, would have been £100 million striker, waited till this summer, he's now playing on loan in Turkey. So the transfer market has somewhat changed. You know, you're not going to get Ollie Watkins out of Villa. You're not going to get Alexander Isak out of Newcastle. Liverpool couldn't get Anthony Gordon out of Newcastle. Normally, these deals would be quite straightforward for a big club, but the prices and clubs are better off now. And FFP has made clubs better off because they can't spend money, so they just keep it. So if you're going to be effective in the transfer market now, then you've got to be different in the transfer market. And Manchester United's big idea at the moment is recruitment. And it's not just about 23, 24-year-olds. It's about 16, 17, 18-year-olds where you can go in to Rosenborg for a player that might sign for Brighton, and then you give Brighton 80 million. Man United want to get them before they go to Brighton. And that is basically it in a sentence. And I'm not saying we're going to be the only football club doing that, but we're certainly a football club that's put a lot of time and investment into this. And in a very short period of time, considering Favell came in June, Ashworth came in early July, Wilcox came in May, Barada came in July. These people have only been here a little bit more than weeks, yes, maybe months, but it doesn't stop because the transfer window's closed. It goes September, October, November, December. I think by the time we hit January, we could have another 2 or 3 in. And by the time we're hitting next summer, the conveyor belt of this could be well up and running, because with every single day, United's networks are growing as these competent people come in and start putting the foundations in place. And that is basically what United are looking to do. We cannot be what we used to be, where we're buying the player afterwards. You know, Martinez goes from South America to Ajax, and you give Ajax 45 million quid. Trying to think of somebody else, but you know what I mean. Chelsea have done it with Brighton. Casido goes to Brighton, and then Brighton get £100 million from Chelsea. This is what Manchester United need to stop from a business point of view. It's one of the big things that Sir Jim Radcliffe and Sir David Brailsford have identified. You can't be spending 89 million, 75 million pounds on these players. You've got to be identifying them 2 or 3 years before that, and then bringing them into our environment where, yeah, we can loan them off. You know, we could loan Kone to Brighton or a French club and get the same development they would get, and then they come back and they're your player anyway. Where Brighton have done really, really well is that they take the risk. They go and get this player that everybody knows about, like Casido. They develop him. He is really good. And then everyone goes, oh, he was really good. We had her. Well, we knew about Casido. Man United knew about Casido. They didn't take the risk. 3 million quid. We didn't do it. Brighton took the risk. Brighton did the work. Brighton earned £100 million. If Man United had took that risk, it would have backfired, because it would have been under Solskjaer with no structure. So Casido would have just been lost in the system and never achieved. So he made the right move going to Brighton. What United want to do is put in place the system where, if that Casido opportunity is there again, you sign Casido. He might not be ready for your first team, so you send him on loan to Preston in the Championship for a year. You take these players in at 17, 18, 19, and you develop them. You don't let them go to Brighton, so then if they have worked out at Leicester, they have worked out at Brighton, there's 80 million quid. That's what United are trying to stop. Financially, we're in trouble. We can't buy these players for 80, 90 million pounds anyway. So what we're doing is, we're aware of them, we bring them in now, and then you set in place individual patterns for them to achieve what they would achieve at Brighton. Because Brighton will give them first team football, of course they will, but we can do that. If they're ready, we put them in the first team, and maybe that will happen with the Arsenal lad, maybe it will happen with Kone. If they're not ready, we will find them a club in France or in the Championship to develop them so that they are ready. And I think it's long overdue. It is another open goal, but it's something we haven't done for 10 years very, very well. So I think it's interesting, and I think we will continue to do it. Paul says, sources are saying that we're scouting a 19-year-old midfielder from Bilbao. I really appreciate us looking at younger talent like Kone. Not just Bilbao, Sevilla, Rennes. We've mentioned Norway. Certainly Brazilian League. Mate, I could give you 2 or 3 stories a day because they're out there. I don't even think it's... I use Nipan as an example, but it's happening. There's loads of it. Like, loads of it's going on. The net is spreading far and wide. And other clubs have been doing this for a while, so it's not like we're going to jump ahead of everybody for doing it. But by not doing it, we've been damaging ourselves. Riley says, sorry, Mark, but the people who keep saying there's no identity to the way we play are people that don't watch United play. Saying it to get a reaction, grow up, says Riley. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, Riley, absolutely. It's just, it's constant and it's not really listening to the other people, is it? You know, I get that people still want to sack Ten Hag. I get that there are United fans who probably want us to lose tonight and lose on Saturday because they're just obsessed about being proven right. But factually, from the eye test or the stat test, I can see progression with Manchester United. It ain't bloody rocket to the title progression, but it is progression. Is it fair to say that Luke Shaw is instrumental to the success of Marcus Rashford? KFJ, no. Absolutely not. That, to me, would make Marcus Rashford the most overrated player in our history. If Marcus Rashford can only play well because of Luke Shaw, then Marcus Rashford's not the player he's meant to be. You can't be a football, imagine Lionel Messi being world class, but only if Iniesta's on the pitch. You can't be that. I think what I would say is do this and Man United will get top 4. Left back. Balance to the team, but it helps the left winger as well. Having a left back does help Rashford and Garnacho because it's a natural overlap and it's a better defender. But I don't agree that Luke Shaw is the key to Marcus Rashford because that would make Marcus Rashford ridiculously one-dimensional. Do I think Marcus Rashford's a better player with Luke Shaw? I think Marcus Rashford's a better player with a proper left-back. I think Garnacho's a better player with a better left-back. So I do get what you're saying, KFJ, but I don't think it's exclusively Luke Shaw that unpicks the key to unlock Marcus Rashford. Mike B says, I felt much better seeing Rashford finally getting subbed. And Trey Warren says, Ten Hag may or may not get sacked, but he has progressed more players than anyone we've ever had, and that's huge for me. Mainu, Garnacho, Ahmad, Collier this season. But I don't really want to talk about Ten Hag though, Trey. I've got to be honest, because it just ends up being this, even me, like I've been doing this for 10 years and I can deal with criticism, out of context, toxicity. Trust me, it's like you get so used to it. But what I do get is bored of it. I'm bored of it. You don't like Ten Hag. We like Ten Hag. Let's just see what happens. Have a bit of patience. It won't take long to see whether there's progress or not. Because, admittedly, 3 difficult Premier League games coming up: Palace away, Spurs at home, Villa away. If you're Ten Hag out, I'll be rubbing my hands together. Because the chances are you're going to come out of that on top. Because Villa away's tough, Palace away's tough, Spurs are dangerous. People are laughing at Spurs, but they actually play good football. They just can't put the ball in the back of the net. When they do, they're dangerous. So out of those 3 games, if you're Ten Hag out and we really are shit, then I would be very confident in my conviction that he's going to get sacked. But I live in the hope that that won't happen. And if we do come out of that with 3 wins, then I think it's definitely progress. And what I will say is, if we do come out of those 3 games and we've won, I think everybody who's been saying there's progress deserves a pat on the back, because you're not claiming it as a Ten Hag out, saying something's changed in the last 3 games. That's what we're saying. We've noticed a change this season and there's signs of life. Let's wait and see if they prosper. Ten Hag, Ahmad is an example of a young player development we seem to have gotten right. He got experience at Sunderland and came back to a Premier League ready player. I don't know, Patrick. You know what? I don't know really about Ahmad. But it ultimately has worked out right. But I think somewhere along the road with Ahmad, we've probably lost a year or 2. I'm not in depth on Ahmad's CV, but I feel that the Sunderland loan worked well. The Rangers one didn't work that well. I think we could have handled Ahmad a little bit better. I think there's probably a year or 18 months in there where we could have done it a little bit better. But ultimately, he's only just 22, and we've got a hell of a good player on our hands. Any truth in scouting? He's meant to be outstanding, says Anders. Is Obi Martin signed yet, as the other ones are confirmed as far as I'm aware? Obi Martin's not been signed yet, no. It will happen though. And I don't know who Batarina is, Anders, so I can't answer that question. Ahmad is keeping our true hero on the bench, says VJ. I think you're talking about Garnacho, or maybe you're talking about Antony, but Ahmad's not benching Garnacho. Rashford's benching Garnacho, in my opinion, because Garnacho is best off the left. I think we saw it at the weekend with Garnacho, didn't we? Goal, got somebody sent off. It's an interesting battle for the wingers at the moment for Manchester United, because I really do think that Garnacho just has this amazing ability to make things happen. And even in that cameo against Southampton, he gets a player sent off and he scores a goal. These things are big game events, and he's just capable of doing that. But look, let's talk about tonight. Manchester United against Barnsley. I believe it's on TV. I've not even thought about that. But Manchester United against Barnsley. This is what Erik ten Hag had to say about this tournament. He said it is a significant tournament, and he said in top football it's about winning trophies and hitting the targets you set in a season, but also in the longer term. You have a strategy, you follow that, develop and progress the team. Something tells that when you win one of the top 5 leagues, you hit some targets and you did your job well. Okay. Yeah. I think he's basically just saying that trophies are important to Manchester United. And look, I said this in the preview yesterday. We can't win every single trophy because we're not going to win the league. And we're not going to win the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup and the Europa League. We won't win 4 of those trophies. It's impossible. We won't win 3 of those trophies. It's impossible. I don't think we'll win 2 of them, but I certainly think winning 1 of them is and has to be a target for the season. If we don't win a trophy this year, but we get top 4, I think that'll be a successful season. But you can't dismiss the Carabao Cup. When Man United used to win league titles under Sir Alex, got to be honest, I'd look at the Carabao Cup and there was times when we won it and I'd be like, it's nice. And nice is such a shit word, isn't it? Always, isn't it nice? It's not amazing. It's not great. It's not fantastic. It's not absolutely fantastic. It's nice. And there was times under Sir Alex where winning the Carabao Cup was nice, or the League Cup or whatever it was called. But where we are at the moment, I think winning the Carabao Cup is better than nice. I think it's good. And I don't think we're in a position as a football club at the moment to be dismissing the Carabao Cup. And we've just spent time talking about Garnacho and Antony and Collier, and Agate tonight I think needs to start as well. It's a big gap between Tuesday and Saturday. So I think that we do have to take it seriously at this moment. And also with the Carabao Cup, as we already know, it's over in February. So it's basically over by the time the FA Cup starts properly. So I don't see really any disadvantage when we've got such a big squad to utilise it in a way to give good players who can't get game time and take the tournament seriously. And what I would feel is if I was Johnny Evans or Antony or one of those players on the bench, I would feel that, this is a game with Europa League ties where I can maybe get to play nearly once a week and show what I'm all about. And I think we should be taking it seriously, yeah. I mean, if we're playing Man City in the next round and they knock us out, I mean, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to be terrified or crying about it. But if we can find a pathway through to the semi-final and then the final and a chance of winning it, why wouldn't you want to do that? I like the mentality of fans who say, I'm not really bothered about this, I hope we get knocked out. I like that mentality because that's the mentality we used to have to a tournament that's really very low priority. But Ten Hag's right. It's a significant trophy if we win it, based upon the last 10 years, where when you look at what we've won 2 of these, 2 FA Cups and a Europa League. So, you can't dismiss it as a tournament that doesn't mean anything, because over the last 10 years, you take that away and it's not that. I agree with Abs. I mean, look, the Europa League is a bigger priority. But the Europa League is another, I look at some of the Europa League games and I think we should be treating it like the Carabao Cup. I mean, there are certain games in the Europa League where I'm looking at that if I'm Ten Hag and I'm going, there ain't no way I'm picking my strongest team against Karabag or whoever else. We're not playing Karabag, but you know what I mean. There are some players, there are some teams in this new, and I you know, it starts in the Champions League tonight, and I wish we were in it. It looks interesting to play one-off games in a bigger league system, but in the Europa League it's a bit shit because there are some rubbish teams in it. But how interesting it will be in game week 5 and 6, 7 and 8 will be very interesting to see when you've already comfortably qualified. So we could have hopefully game 6, 7 and 8 in the Europa League where we've already qualified in the top 8. And then you really are giving peripheral players game time again. So, you know, the Europa League is a bigger priority than the Carabao Cup, but we might have opportunity to rest players in the Europa League more than you think. The latter stages will be more important, of course. Baturina is a Croatian youngster compared to Modric, apparently. Hope we can play some youngsters tonight. Come on, United, says Anders. I know who you're talking about. I saw an article the other day linking us to the next Modric, which I sort of skimmed read. Well, I wouldn't be surprised, Anders, because I think if there are good young players out there, I think United will be looking at them. We won't be the only ones looking at them, but yeah, I think we will. We should save our best team for the Europa League, says King. Should we? Have you seen some of the crap that's in that? I don't think we should be saving our best team. I don't think we should be playing our best team in the Europa League, actually. I'd play our best team against Fenerbahce and Porto. And there's another team in there that's quite decent, but I wouldn't be playing our best team in the Europa League against everybody. I would be rotating it. The Premier League is the priority. The Europa League only really becomes important if you struggle or when you're in the knockout stage. It's got to be a squad game. I mean, it's got nothing to do with Man United, but Bernardo Silva of Man City, who plays in one of the best squads in the world, was moaning about the volume of games. Alisson of Liverpool was moaning about the volume of games in their press conference yesterday. So rotation is going to be absolutely massive, and we know from our injury record last year just how important that is. Harry Dillett says Ten Hag always plays his best team of favourites. And Spurs are the only other decent team in the Europa League, says Robert. Yeah, I do like what you're saying, Robert, but you know and I know that that's exactly what people thought about the Conference League last year with Villa. They didn't win it. And that's a lot of what people thought with Liverpool in the Europa League last year. They didn't win it. So I think it's a bit dangerous in Europe to underestimate just what can happen when you take things lightly, certainly. Amas played so well against Salah. He's been teased by Erik Ten Hag, in my opinion, says Chunky. Look, going back to what was said there from Anders and Chunky, really hope that we do see Amas tonight at left back. Really want to see Collier starting. And also, I would love to see a couple of youngsters on the bench given a bit of time. But we've got to be don't forget Ethan Wheatley as well. We've got to be very, very careful. Barnsley are... I was watching League One football last night, Wrexham against Birmingham. Obviously, they're high up. I think they're both joint top at the moment, but Barnsley are 7th in that league. So we should dispatch them. But if Barnsley goes strong and we're off it, we've seen what can happen at Old Trafford in these types of games over the last 10 years. We've been knocked out. We've had pink boots and all sorts. So I wouldn't be playing the kids if that's what you could get the job done. And what we want to see from Man United tonight is, without disrespecting Barnsley, is a mentality that wants to play first team football. You're not playing in the reserves. You're playing game 5 of this new season. This is only our 5th game this season. And things can change around very, very quickly. And, I'm talking miracles here, but if Antony had the game of his life and scored a hat-trick, people would start saying he deserves a chance in the first team soon. So that's the way I'd be approaching it as a Man United player, is that games like this, if you over-exceed, can very much put you in the eyes of the manager for the weekend. And I think if Agate starts, I want to see him putting in a performance where he's very, very dominant, showing that he's ready to play and start against Crystal Palace. Because we're not here to talk about Crystal Palace, but I would be absolutely terrified if we go to Palace and Selhurst Park and play Mainu and Eriksson just because we beat Southampton. Now, that's a point for later in the week. that is a point for later in the week, but it might worry you a little bit like it worries me. Oh, let's stick with a winning team. It terrifies me playing Eriksson and Mainu against Palace, because I don't massively think it worked against Southampton. If they'd scored that penalty, that game could have gone very, very differently. We were good when we took control, but I don't think we got control of that game because of the midfield. I think we got control of that game because Onana saved the penalty and we went up the other end and scored, and Southampton's heads dropped. So I want to see tonight a really good performance from the midfield to sort of force Ten Hag to change it. Obviously my problem's not Mainu. It's more Eriksson in a midfield too. I just don't think he's got the legs for it, if I'm being fair. I agree with Optic. He is more of a number 10. Reggie says that Mason Mount should have never left Chelsea. I think with Mason Mount, look, I know it got spoken about. Fantastic show last night, the fan forum, with Ricky Mords and Kevin and Beth, and I know they were speaking about Mount there, so I don't want to go on about it too much. My stance with Mason Mount at the moment is, and it's fast becoming a consistent opinion on Mason Mount, is that really he is unknown. I just don't put any expectation on him. I think the excitement and buzz has gone. I'm not calling him a flop. I just don't really see what we're supposed to think about Mason Mount at the moment, because the poor lad's been injured 4 or 5 times. He had a really good pre-season. He gets injured again. And I just, it reminds me a little bit of Cavani, although Cavani obviously a better player, but and Varane. Even if he's a good player, the most important thing he's got to do is not be a good player. He's got to be a fit player. There's no point in having players that can play well for 2 or 3 games and then they're out for 3 months. It's like he's got to stay fit. With Mason Mount, I'm not even bothered about how good he is. I think he is a good player, but if he doesn't stay fit, he's irrelevant. He's got to stay fit. So I'm sort of indifferent to Mason Mount at the moment. I think there's a really good player there. But if he can't stay fit till Christmas, which is what he was meant to be doing before this injury, then there's not a lot to get excited about, is it? Fitness is massive. People moan about people like Rashford and Bruno and, I don't know, Delo or whatever. There are fans out there that have problems with all sorts of players, but I've just named 3 players there that predominantly are fit, and that they're worth their weight in gold. They really, really are. I've seen short clips of Malacia in training, and he looks sharp on the ball, looks lean also. Hopefully he comes back soon and can play at left back, says Ryan. I can't remember when I last spoke about Malacia, so apologies if it was last week, but my opinions on Malacia is that he will get injured again very, very quickly the minute we throw him into intense Premier League football, because the vast majority of players that have been out for that long pick up a secondary injury very quickly after coming back to intense football. You're not necessarily going to get it in training where you're being monitored, but you can't be monitored on a football pitch. It's competitive, it's strenuous. Your body's doing things that you can't protect it from, which you can in training. So I think the minute Malacia comes back, I'd be very worried about a secondary injury. I'm not saying a knee injury, but a calf strain or a hamstring or something like that. So I think United will be fully aware of that as well. So I think Malacia game time could be managed pretty intensely between now and Christmas, really. I don't think Malacia starts against Spurs in a couple of weeks, plays really well, and then he's playing all the time. I think we're going to have to manage that situation. Not playing football for over a year is a big thing. And I think, am I right in saying that Lavia came back for Chelsea and he's injured again? I think Lavia's just gone through a very similar thing that I just said. He was out for a year, came back, looked quite good, and I'm pretty sure he's got a secondary injury very, very quickly. Let me just have a look on that. I don't want to spread false news, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. Chelsea. Lavia, thigh injury. Yeah. There you go. It's those secondary, when you have a bad injury, if you break your ankle and you're out for 3 months, the chances of you coming back and having a right calf strain will be high, because it's your body's imbalanced from recovering from that, and then you go back to It's like, you know what it's like? If you've ever driven a car and your left tyre on the front is got no grip and your right tyre on the front has to do more work. So when you replace your left tyre and put a brand new one on, you should really replace your right one so they're starting from an equal situation. But what happens is you put the new tyre on the left, you look at the right one and go, it's fine. But it's still more worn down than the left, and then there's an imbalance again, and then you'll have a problem with the right one. And that's basically what tends to happen. And the longer the injury is, like a big major knee injury, then the longer the injury is, the more the other leg has been compensating. And then when you go back to having your left leg back, your right leg's sort of like, bloody hell, I'm not used to this, and you can get problems. So we've just got to be very careful with Malacia. And then, on top of that, how good is he? How good is Malacia? You know, as a left back, is he as good as Luke Shaw? Is he better than Antony Robertson at Fulham? You know, is the lad at Luton better than him? So once we've got him back fit and able to play, we've then got to figure out how good he is again. Mazraoui was an absolute bargain, says Harvey Specter. Yeah, I really like the signing. Really like the signing. And if Antony scores a hat-trick, the media would slate him, says Phil, 81. If Antony scores a hat-trick, I want him to do the spin move. Yeah. How good do you actually think Malacia is, Mark? It's a long time. It's a long time since we've seen him. Going back to the games before he got injured, the season before he got that season when he got injured at the end, which was the season before. He missed all of last season, didn't he? Did he miss all of last season? Yeah, he missed all of last season, didn't he? Because it's a year. So, trying to remember what Malacia was like, I thought he was decent on the ball, decent in the tackle, relatively good pace, positionally switched off a few times. That's pretty much my assessment of him. Can't remember much about what he was like going forward. I think he was okay going forward. So, I think he's lost a year, unfortunately for the lad. He's lost a year where you'd expect him to either just stagnate and stay at that level or kick on. So it's a big ask. It's a really big ask for Malacia, you know. When you think about it and you're fair, there can be no pressure because he's 25. Like, you know, he's 25 and he was 23 when he got injured. So he's lost massive years there. You know, if he was 21, you'd sort of go time's on his side a little bit. But at 25, it's a big ask to get back fit and then develop beyond what you were before into a consistent left back for Man United. I hope he can do it though. Miracles can happen. But I'll say what I said at the start. We started talking about Luke Shaw. We've ended talking about Malacia. If Man United don't get top four and don't solve the left back problem, then I think if we miss out on top four by anything like 5 or 6 points and we never sorted out left back, I will look at it and go, well, it was a very, very obvious thing to do. Match day today. Very excited for it. I wouldn't say I'm always excited about the Carabao Cup, and I respect the fact if you're not, but I'm really excited about tonight because I think there's just so many players that I want to see play. Garnacho, Collier, Antony, even Antony, Casemiro. Hopefully Amas will play. I'm actually really looking forward to the game tonight. So, yeah. My vlog is coming out on That's Football at midday. Please do give it a watch. Goldbridge, Tom Brady and Gary Neville at the Blues. There wasn't a link up. Don't worry, I won't ruin it. But check that out. It's coming out about midday. We've just got a little bit more editing to do on that. And, of course, it's match day, so we will be here on the United Stand. Absolute legends this morning. Nice to see a bit of a more positive chat and a bit of buzz going on. When Shaw comes back, will Mazraoui just sit on the bench, says Gold Star? I think the battle between Delo and Mazraoui is not that simple, mate. I really don't think that's as straightforward as you think. I would not be surprised if by the time Luke Shaw comes back, Mazraoui's retired. And on that bombshell, thank you very much. I'll speak to you all in a bit.